Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to /malicious compliance, where people on purpose follow exact orders to spite someone. And in today's episode, we've got people getting back at bad Karen bosses, crappy boyfriends, horrible roommates, and one OP tells a story about the time one smug company takes them to court and it backfires hard. It's such a good lineup today. I hope you enjoy the stories, don't shake your heads too hard, and as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. This happened years and years ago, and I still think about it sometimes. I used to work at a giant furniture warehouse. In the back, we had a little break room. It was a couple of vending machines, mismatched chairs, and a TV that played sitcom reruns at half volume. It's basically the company's idea of employee morale. Anyways, one slow afternoon, everyone's sitting around, scrolling through their phones. The TV's off, the vibe's dead. So I think, hey, why not liven it up a little? So I pull out my Nintendo Switch and plug it in, and I start up some Mario Kart. Within minutes, people are laughing, having a good time, and passing my controllers around. We're having fun at work, and then she walks in, my supervisor. This woman was the human embodiment of a corporate policy binder. We'll call her Karen because why not? She stops dead in the doorway with her arms crossed, face already disapproving. She then says out loud, "You can't use the TV for personal entertainment, you know." At this point, I blink. I try to explain, saying no one was using it. She then says it doesn't matter. It's a company TV, company property. She then stares at me, waiting for me to unplug everything. It was a really weird power trip, I tell you. So I nod, unplug my Switch, smile and say, "Got it." And that, friends, was the moment my brain cracked. On the way home, I remember my parents keeping an old CRT TV that's ancient in their garage. I swear I heard Angel sing. My dad uses it sometimes to watch stuff when he's tinkering around with cars. So I stop by and grab it, and seriously, if you remember CRT TVs, they are heavy. So I stop by, wrestle this monster into my trunk, and nearly throw out my spine doing it. But it's worth it because I've got a plan. The next morning, I roll into work with this absolute beast of a television. Everyone's staring at me like I've lost my mind, and to be fair, maybe I have, but I'm way too far gone to stop now. I drag the TV into the break room right underneath the company TV that's mounted on the wall. I then plug it in and fire up my Nintendo Switch. Company TV on top, untouched. My TV below, gigantic, glorious, personal property. Within minutes, the break room's packed again. People are playing Mario Kart, yelling, cheering. The air is electric. And then my supervisor appears. She freezes and stares at the scene, and then she blinks and says, "What is that?" I gesture proudly and I say, "My TV. You said I can't use the company's TV, so I brought my own." She then sputters and says, "You can't just... You are blocking the view." I look around, the company TV's off, and everyone's watching my screen like it's the Stanley Cup Finals. I respond, "The view of what?" At this point, she knows I've got her. Her eye twitches, and she just turns around and walks out. That TV didn't end up lasting long there. After the third day there, I was brought into the office and I had a talk with the manager, someone whom I didn't mind, and I was told to please bring it home. I did, but in my mind, I had won against my Karen supervisor because the look on her face when she saw me following the rules too well, that was worth almost throwing out my back for. Guys, I love this malicious compliance so much, and I do remember how big and heavy those CRT TVs were. So props to OP for lugging something like that into their workplace. That said, it's just so weird how some bosses feel the need to power trip over employees because that's exactly what the supervisor was doing. Like, no personal use. You're on break, that's personal time, and chances are you're using the TV for personal entertainment. Like, just let the workers have a little fun on their breaks, Karen. Way to keep the company morale super duper low. Okay, so this one time in college, I was working at this super fancy restaurant. You know, the kind with folded napkins like origami, 3 forks, 3 knives, 2 dessert spoons. Basically a place that charges $20 for a tiny plate of something where you only get 1 bite. I usually served, but sometimes I manned the bar on slow nights or for special events. Now, this place had a pretty wild wine list, both local and international stuff. Because we were near a college with a sommelier program, we got a lot of students who came in to sample wines and geek out about pairings. Most of them were awesome. They actually cared about wine, and they would talk about why something went well with a dish. And honestly, I learned a ton from them. We'd give them small 3-ounce samples at a discounted price, but they had to prove they were in the sommelier program. Nothing shady, just some light education for the next generation of wine nerds. That said, enter this woman. Let's call her Madame Psycho Sommelier. This woman was probably in her 60s, and I'd seen her a few times before. She was always a bit difficult, but manageable, but that night, she decided that she was going to try everything. She kept coming up to the bar like, "I'm a sommelier, pour me this, pour me that," with this ridiculous air of superiority, like I was beneath her or something. The woman would snap at servers, rolled her eyes, and asked me why the wine was awful if she didn't like it, literally blaming me for her own taste buds. Of course, I calmly explained our policy. We charge for 3-ounce samples, but discounted for actual sommelier students. The woman waved me off every time, saying, "Just keep pouring my wine." So with that, cue malicious compliance. I thought, okay, sure. You want me to keep pouring you wine? I'll keep pouring you wine. At the end of the meal, the bill comes, and suddenly there's fire in her eyes. The woman storms up to me shrieking, "What's the meaning of this? Why have I been charged 14 separate times for 3-ounce glasses of wine?" I try to explain politely that we charge for samples, but at a reduced rate only for students. But she doesn't care. She demands my manager. So fine, I get the manager. She shows him the bill and she goes nuclear, screaming, "I want all of this erased. I come here so often and I refuse to be treated like some common wino, blah blah blah." You get the gist. The manager just looks at her as calm as a monk and he goes, "Ma'am, I've never had a sommelier in here order this much wine. You can't get drunk for free." And the look on her face was disbelief. We end up charging her full price, and the bill, I believe, was $550. It was a 4-course meal, and she paid for 2 of her friends. The woman fumed, and meanwhile, I just smiled inside. Best day ever. You gotta love smug, drunk Karens, right? Making absolutely no sense. I come here so often, you know, so I shouldn't have to pay. Like, what kind of logic is that, Karen? And this person comments, "I refuse to be treated like some common wino," but you are a common wino. You don't know what you're ordering or why, and you're upset that the wine doesn't pair well with what you're ordering. Because your taste and experience is ignorant, you are a wino. And don't get me wrong, professional wine tasting is BS. But you can kind of get the ballpark idea of what wines go with what food to suit your palate, if you take the time to learn and give a crap. And for all who are curious, OP says she did come back to the restaurant, but she never did a wine tasting ever again. So about 3 years ago now, I was in an abusive relationship. The guy never put a hand on me, but the emotional damage lasted a long time. To make a long story short, his favorite game to play was pretending that he was going to end his life, and I was the only person in the world who could stop him. I'm sure you don't need any more explanation to understand his character. Not only was he verbally abusive and incredibly manipulative, but he was a very jealous person. The event that leads up to my story revolves around a guy who was very close. He was a friend of mine. And the funny thing is, my ex liked him too. He always had nice things to say about him, and they got along really well. But it came time for this friend to go to college, and he was moving away. I was of course sad, and I expressed to my ex that I would miss him a lot. Suddenly, my then boyfriend became very cold, and he just stopped talking to me for hours. Finally, after texting him, nagging him, giving him his space, he let me know that he was hurt, disgusted, and betrayed that I would ever speak about another man like this. He let me know that he needed some time to himself to, quote, think about what to do with me as my punishment. This was probably the 4th or 5th time he's given me the silent treatments as a form of punishment, and they would usually last about a week or so. I would usually beg and beg and beg for him to talk to me. And finally, he would grace me with his attention and let me know that I was blessed with his forgiveness for my cruelty. Laugh out loud. So I once again sat and waited. I was anxious and unable to sleep. Then, maybe 3 or 4 days later, something inside of me broke. I realized how peaceful things were for me when I wasn't talking to him. All of a sudden, my rose-tinted glasses came off, and I realized I had lost attraction to him a long time ago, and I was only with him out of fear. He was physically and mentally revolting, so I decided what I was going to do with him. Sure, I could have blocked him, and maybe nowadays I would have, but at the time, this guy caused me so much emotional distress that I wanted to make sure I rubbed it in. I decided to just stay silent like he wanted me to. And finally, about 3 days after I made my decision, he texted me saying, "So, what are we?" He was probably expecting me to beg him to come back at this point, but no, I let him know that we were done. And I've never ever seen him backtrack so hard. The guy blew up my phone with texts and phone calls saying how sorry he was for ignoring me. He then tried to say it was my fault and that he was actually giving me space because he thought I was mad at him. All I said was I was being done being in a relationship with someone who refused to talk to me about problems, and then blocked him. He tracked down every account I had on every social media, sending me these long paragraphs how sorry he was, and he got blocked on those too. Yeah, I'm sure he was very sorry once he realized he lost his favorite punching bag. And this is where he surprised me. He was so caught up in his good guy, tough guy facade that I never thought he would try to involve other people. He went to our mutual friends and eventually he drove them all away by begging them to make me talk to him or asking them to send me his long paragraphs. They thought it was all so pathetic. They read his letters to me and they began to realize how horrible and manipulative he was. And soon they cut him off too. Remember folks, communication is key. Don't you just love it when a smug idiot's plan backfires? And guys, I love it even more that everyone around him realized who he was and they wanted nothing to do with him anymore. But that's what narcissists do, right? They make it so you're the problem even when they're 100% at fault. Just chipping away at you one bit at a time and twisting emotions. And in this case, thank goodness it did backfire and good riddance. OP can do a bajillion times better. And OP says, 100%. He definitely wanted me to grovel like I used to, but at that point, I was just so exhausted by the relationship. I realized that the only thing he could do to make things worse was if he started putting his hands on me. So to me, I was like, F it, let him do his worst. Even now, his self-righteousness is so ridiculous and so out of touch with reality that I can't help but laugh looking back at it. And this person shares their comment and they say, when I was 17 at the time, I had a boyfriend who was very pretentious. I personally found that funny, so I didn't mind. However, the guy was hell-bent on proving how much more intelligent he was than me. One day, he was bragging about this online IQ test he did and how smart he was. He just begged me to do one as well. However, I had just smoked and was high, so I refused. After some more begging, I decided, why not? It could be fun. Despite being high out of my mind, I scored higher on the IQ test. The guy was so pissed, it was hilarious. He never bragged about his IQ test ever again. Another time, he really wanted to show off playing chess against me. I'm really bad at the game, and I told him so. But I knew people who were good, and they gave me the advice to never have a pawn that wasn't protected by another. So I did just that. Halfway through, I captured most of his pawns and he rage quit at chess. The guy flipped the board, broke some of his pieces, and he just marched out of the room. Needless to say, a week or two after, we were no longer together. I made him too insecure, and he went back to his ex, who he called extremely stupid. At least he gave me a lot of laughing materials for years to come. Alright, so this happened at work a while ago. We have to use this one legal services vendor for a few of our clients. Honestly, we'd rather use anyone else. They're slow, expensive, and they've been jerks to us for years. Anyway, one day, we accidentally missed paying one of their bills. It was totally an honest mistake. It just got misplaced in the wrong stack. As soon as we notice it, the next day, we pay it. And not just by mail, we hand-delivered the check to their office. Problem solved, right? Wrong. A few days later, they call, furious, insisting that we also owe their court-mandated late payment fine. Because apparently, there's a rule that if you pay late, you owe a tiny fee. And here's the kicker. In our rush to pay them, we accidentally mail them a second check, paying them twice. So we tell them, hey, just consider that your late fee. But they don't care. No, they decide they're going to drag us to court to make us pay the fine. We're like, okay, this is gonna be funny. Let's do it. Fast forward to the hearing, and it lasts 5 minutes. 5 whole minutes. The judge says, technically, the payment was late, so they're right about the fine. But wait, you overpaid them by $200. So now, the judge ordered them to pay us back. And then, for the next 4 minutes, the judge lectures them about being petty, wasting time, wasting money, and acting like jerks. So instead of getting double paid, they spent money, lawyer time, and their dignity just to give us back most of the overpayment. The whole thing's ridiculous, trivial amounts of money. It was a system designed for months or years of unpaid bills, and they treated a 12-hour delay like we committed a felony. Honestly, we just laughed, and that vendor, well, they got a very public lesson in why being petty doesn't pay. So a few years ago, I kept getting random text messages asking for Dr. So-and-so and appointment bookings. At first, I was polite, you know, the whole sorry, wrong phone number routine, and eventually, I just stopped responding to the texts and calls altogether. But after constant texts and calls in the span of a month, I started losing my grip on sanity. One day, curiosity got the better of me, so I Googled the number. It turns out there was a real clinic, and their phone number was almost identical to mine. Their phone number ended in 013, and mine ends in 073. The font on their website, however, was some curly nonsense that made the 1 look like a 7, so people were dialing my number. So I did the reasonable thing. I called the clinic. The lady answers with the kind of voice that tells you that she's done for the day. I explain what's happening nicely at first, that their typo is giving me non-stop wrong number calls and text messages asking to book appointments. She then goes, well, I don't know what you want me to do about it. Maybe you should change your phone number. Hearing that, I'm stunned. I say, you mean I should change my number because you guys typed yours in a weird font on your website? She then sighs and she goes, ugh, you're being dramatic. And I'm thinking, dramatic? Oh honey, you have no idea how dramatic I can be. A little bit later, the texts start again. So I decided to deal with it exactly like she told me. I'd get a call saying, hi, I'd like to book an appointment. And I would respond, of course, the next available slot is Friday at 10 a.m. Does that work? Okay, see you then. And I made sure everyone's appointment was for the exact same time, 10 o'clock sharp, Friday morning. And here's the thing, I didn't lie, I never said I was the clinic. If someone asked, I would say, you've got the wrong phone number, but if they didn't, well hey, I'm not a mind reader. So Friday comes around and oh boy, my phone explodes. The clinic calls. Apparently, the clinic's waiting room was packed with over a dozen confused patients, all insisting they'd booked with me. Here's how the conversation went. The clinic lady says, "Are you the one pretending to be a receptionist?" I respond, "Pretending? No, I'm just scheduling my own appointments. You told me to deal with it." At that she responds, "You can't just book patients. Do you understand the mess you've caused?" She's fuming now, and she says, "You are insane. Do you know what kind of liability this is? You could be sued." I respond, "Good thing I'm not a doctor then." The conversation basically ends with her saying, "You can't just do this, we're reporting you." At that point, I just hung up and then blocked the number. A few weeks later, I checked their website and they'd switched to an online booking system. Clean, new font too. No more weird cursive numbers. I no longer got any texts or calls from random people. So yeah, I'd like to think I helped modernize their business by having a complete mental breakdown. You know what, can't blame OP for doing what they did, right? But at the same time, I do feel bad for the people who got caught in the middle, but that fault lies with the clinic though. Like, they could have fixed this with less hassle, but no. And also, who the heck thought using cursive numbers on a website was a good idea? It's almost like they deserved what happened. And this person comments, "I once shared a landline phone number that was nearly identical to a nearby McDonald's. The only difference was I had a 0 and they had an 8. Occasionally, when the ink ran low on the register, it looked like my phone number, and we'd get calls from people pissed about incorrect orders. One guy called 3 times, and he wouldn't listen to my roommate when they tried to point out the wrong number. The final time, he called my roommate, and my roommate answered, 'McDonald's, how can I help you?' and gave the worst customer service you can imagine. The caller was livid, asking for a name and a manager. My roommate then berated him for calling the wrong number repeatedly. The rest of us were dying of laughter. So it became apparent to me last week that my roommates were trying to drive me out of the house to get one of their boyfriends in on my lease. When I told them I wanted to stay, they started staging incidents and messes around the house so they could yell at me for them. And it all came to a head when they called a meeting with me 2 days ago. One of them had to hold the other back as she screamed at me that she hated me and I was not welcome in the building. They then proceeded to tell me that I contribute nothing to the house, and I wasted their space, and that they had gotten in touch with the landlady. They convinced her not to renew my lease when it's over. So I told them that I would talk to the landlady, and when they said that they were the heads of the house and they practically owned the place, I just laughed and I went on with my day. I then spoke to the landlady, and she acknowledged that they were out of hand. And while she had given them the power to not renew my lease, she also said that I could move out whenever and not pay for a single day I wasn't there. So yesterday, when my roommates both left to visit family, they are sisters, I immediately called everyone I knew, and I vacated the house of everything I owned. I took the curtains, the rugs, all the cat toys, and even the cat tower I made with my mom. I took all their things off my IKEA shelves and other furniture, and I stacked them in the middle of the now nearly empty living room. I then snapped pictures of everything. I handed the keys to the landlady, and I immediately effed off. They won't be back to the house until tomorrow. I've blocked them on everything, so I won't get any messages, but I'm sure their faces will be priceless when they come home to a half-empty house with hundreds of dollars in storage and furniture gone. So much for me not contributing anything to the house. Now, I actually don't. They also have to find someone else to take up the lease till the boyfriend can move in, or they have to pick up my rent. It feels pretty good. Update. So it took a while for things to settle down, but I'll post a quick update on how everything's going. I emailed my attorney asking if the screenshots I took of my landlady's text saying I could leave with no financial repercussions would protect me. He said I was good to go and I'd be covered by it. Also, a lot of people are asking whether or not my roommates will actually have to pick up my rent. My lease specifically states, if one tenant is not able to fulfill their portion of the rent, it'll be up to the other tenants to make up the difference. She did tell me though that it's their responsibility to get someone to lease my room until the boyfriend can move in. Also, the girls came back from visiting family today, so it's certain that they've seen the empty house now. I haven't gotten any calls from any officers about any stolen goods, so I'm thinking I'm in the clear. Considering I haven't actually stolen anything, they would be filing a false report, which is very illegal. And the big one, my boyfriend was pretty pissed about the whole situation, and he had also observed the abusive text and language they've sent and said to me. They confronted both of my roommates online about how they've been acting. They immediately went to their dad and he had the cops called. I don't know all the details, and frankly, I don't want to because I have them blocked. I want nothing to do with them and I just want my life to go on. But yeah, my boyfriend pretty much had to go to the station and sign some papers saying he'd leave them alone. I'm pretty pissed at him for confronting them, but the cops, come on. Anyways, I'm moving in with my boyfriend until I can find another place. I've got 2 lined up that I'm interested in, both of which have girls I know and can trust. Hopefully if something like this happens to you, you use similar tactics. I would love to hear about it. It was also really encouraging to know that I'm not alone in having roommate issues. It was uplifting to hear other people's stories and how they got through with it. Sending lots of love. Guys, stories like this never get old, and honestly, every time I read something like this, where OP leaves crappy roommates and they take everything, I get so freaking happy. It serves them right. Like, I'm just imagining the roommates completely losing it, coming back to an almost empty place. It's always funny though, when roommates want someone out and they don't realize that that someone owns most of the stuff in the place. And now, the 2 sisters have to figure out how to get enough money for both furniture and rent. Love it. A little over 6 years ago, my husband was at the grocery store, and right outside the door, he found this skin and bones dirty fluff ball. He had a paw that seemed to have been crushed at some point. Well, he brought him home, we cleaned him up, and fed him. He was just a kitten, but he devoured 2 full cans of cat food, clearly very hungry. Well, we did the right thing. We took a picture of him and we posted him on Facebook, asking if he belonged to anyone. We said we were happy to keep him if he didn't have a home. Someone claimed him, so we returned him. The next day, another person finds him. She also posted, and the same person claimed him. New person asked if she could pick him up because her husband was out with the car. She said she couldn't, and she told the rescuer to put him outside and he'll find his way home. The rescuer lived about 2 miles away from her. It was freezing outside, snow on the ground, and the rescuer said she wasn't comfortable with that. Some people who had seen our post and the new post start politely suggesting it would be safer to keep him inside. His owner lived next to a busy street across from the grocery store where my husband originally found him. She started getting angry and defensive, saying it was impossible to keep him inside, blah blah blah. His crushed paw was brought up and she said he was fine. She then said, if you all think you know better than me what's best for my cat, just keep him. So cue Malicious Compliance. The second rescuer messaged us and said she couldn't keep him and she asked if we wanted him. We said absolutely. My husband went and picked him up. The original owner lost her lid. She started messaging us saying that she was gonna call the cops and that we stole her cat. I replied with a screenshot of her comment saying to keep him. We then took him to a vet and the vet estimated he was 8 months old. He also said the paw didn't seem to be causing any pain, so an x-ray wasn't necessary. We neutered him, gave him his shots, flea meds, ear mite meds, and wormers, and our 2 cats became friends with him. We named him Mickey. As I mentioned earlier, it's been 6 years. Mickey has never once tried to get out. As for the original owner calling the cops, if she did, they told her to kick rocks. They never showed up. I saved that screenshot though, and all of our 3 boys are very happy and healthy indoor cats. And here's a picture. What a lovely cat that is, guys. And seriously, OP is a hero for saving that poor kitty, saving him from a Karen. I'm just glad to know that Mickey's probably living his best life with a loving family now. What an ending that was. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /malicious compliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy, crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitledpeople episode where a psycho Karen abandons her kids to go on a cruise. And it's the worst mistake of her life, guys. It was such a wild story. So go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.